Live from the JSA Podcast Studio, presenting Data Movers, showcasing the leaders behind the headlines in the telecom and data center infrastructure industry.
Hey everybody, welcome to our podcast series, Data Movers. I'm your host, Jamie Scotto-Kataya, CEO and founder of JSA, along with my very fabulous co-host, top B2B social media influencer, Mr. Evan Kirstel. Hey Evan.
Hey, Jamie. Hey, everyone. Great to be back. It's been a little while as we're scurrying around the world, going to shows and events, but so excited to sit down again with some of the leading and most influential men and women in today's data center and telco world, supporting the infrastructure requirements of this new normal. Speaking of infrastructure and phone calls, Jamie, do you still use the phone, answer the phone, make phone calls? What's your take on the old school world of communications?
I'm the worst. If my iPhone doesn't tell me who, like there's no name attached, I send a voice. I do like that new feature though, where you can like hear the voicemail and then click in and pick it up afterwards. I feel like that's helping me get a little bit more brave about picking up calls that you just don't know who it's from. I don't know. Have you seen that feature yet?
Yeah, that's a really good one. But sadly, the rest of the world who aren't as savvy as you are with new iPhone features, a lot of us have just stopped taking phone calls with all the scams and spam and people selling you car insurance and just unbelievable amount of nonsense. And, there needs to be solutions. And there've been attempts to kind of clamp down on it, but it's been a sad situation for good old-fashioned phone calls, whether on mobile or fixed line, for a long time.
Yeah, think of all the millions of dollars that people have been hustled out of just from scams alone.
Scams and also all those calls that you miss that are important, whether it's maybe your doctor or pharmacy. I mean, we're really in a bit of a situation with our telecom network and traditional telephony, which is part of the rationale for this chat today.
That's right. Beautiful transition here as we bring on our guest of the hour. As you know, here at Data Movers, we really like to dive into background stories, career highs and lows, unique perspectives of the future of our industry. And I can't think of a more timely guest than our very own Jeffrey Ross, the COO of 1Route, a company that provides call service providers and mobile network operators with an all-in-one revenue assurance, fraud management, mobile money solution with real-time detection, blocking, analytics, reporting, the whole 9 yards.
Hey, welcome, Jeffrey. How are you?
I'm great. Jamie and Evan, thank you so much. Jamie, that was awesome. Because it's a mouthful. So
she's good, huh? It's amazing. Well, it's great to have you here. Great to have a real authentic Texan on the show. Maybe, start by introducing yourself to the audience, your background in telecom, and your mission at 1Route.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. So again, my name is Jeffrey Ross and I work for 1Route. 1Route's actually based in Ireland and I am based here in Texas, born and raised in Texas. So yes, I'm as authentic as they get. We also have a sister company, GBSD Technologies, which is based here in Texas, which does a lot of the development of the technologies used by 1Route. So got those two things going on. Like I said, born and raised here in Texas. My background in telecom has actually been quite brief and only for about 4 or 5, coming up on 5 years. I was formerly in the military, did a stint there, and then went into banking because I didn't know what else to do. So after that almost sucked the life out of me. I knew a guy who had a business and right place, right time. So transitioned to a completely different industry, and I haven't looked back. Truly enjoyed it. So, but yeah, I feel like I've been kind of in this business for quite some time, but at the same time, literally only for a few years and drinking from the fire hose. But 1Route, as you said so well, we do a lot of revenue assurance, fraud management, For layman's terms, or for people, non-technical people like me, it's just we are detecting and blocking in real time all of this junk that you were talking about that's going on in the cell phone networks. And that goes into mobile money, which is a little different than we're used to here in the States. Mobile money being primarily in Africa, Southeast Asia, where there's no bank account, and your cell phone is actually your cell phone, and your cell phone account is actually your bank account. So cool stuff over there. And then finally, I'll say we are involved with a program called Stir Shaken here in the United States, which is really kind of the result of why you start seeing spam on your caller ID or telemarketer or potential spam. So we are a certificate authority here under the Stir Shaken ecosystem. So it's a like 20 years worth of business wrapped up in just a few seconds.
I know there's so much to unpack there. I'm like, wait. I wanted to stop you 12 times. But by the way, thank you for the Stir Shaken campaign. Such a helpful note when I'm like, oh, potential spam. I feel even more confident going to voicemail.
Exactly.
So thank you. But I want to rewind tape a little bit, because you started off mentioning your military experience, and as coming from a family of the military, how have you applied your experience in that military service? Thank you again for your service.
Oh, yeah.
To the work that you do right now in our telecom industry. I feel like there might be a correlation there.
There's a good correlation. Yeah. So I did some time with the United States Marine Corps, love the Marines, and being a former Marine, I would say you learn some of the greatest things you'll ever learn while you're in the Marines. You might learn some of the worst things you'll ever learn, but you learn a lot of the great things too. But really that transition into telecom is, I'll tell you, it sounds simple, but things like being honest. If you don't know the answer, it's okay to say, I don't know, but I'll get back to you, at a later date or when I find out the answer. And I think it's just a novel thing that a lot of us take for granted. But when you're open and honest with people, it just sets the tone and gets that trust level built up. But the main thing also, I'd say the transition, because telecom is such a global community, and being in the military and meeting people from outside of Texas, from different walks of life, different cultures, different religions, different everything, you really get to translate that over into this global industry and have a respect for people and their backgrounds and where they come from.
Well said. And speaking of global presence, 1Route, you are global. You're everywhere, supporting customers around the world. But what regions in particular of the world are interesting for you, and from a digital infrastructure perspective, and why are they so relevant to the business?
That's a good question, Evan. I would say the one that intrigues me the most would probably be Africa. Africa being, it's interesting for many reasons, and I'll play the PC card. All regions are interesting in their own way, but Africa seems to be more, maybe not necessarily on the cutting edge of technology, but more open to using newer technologies. And I think a lot of that's based on the lack of infrastructure in their rural areas. So I know in one case there was in Mozambique, they had a project with Google, or a subsidiary of Google, and they were using stratospheric balloons to expand their network. So stuff like that, they're always looking at, okay, how do we expand? How do we reach people in these masses that are out there in these rural areas? And I always think that's so cool. Along with the fraud side, they deal with a lot of different fraud types that we don't here in the States. And they are very creative, and they're very open to always creating and being open to using the latest and greatest technologies.
Yeah. And to add further, I know they're cutting edge in sustainability as well, because again, they don't have all that incumbent.
Absolutely, Jamie. I mean, you think about, they got, in South Africa, they have rolling blackouts a lot as well. So much of their networks in the telecom industry, the failover and redundancy that they have to have is unbelievable. But I would say they intrigue me the most, and they are always coming up. Again, mobile money, I mentioned it earlier. That's something that's huge in Africa, and it's just because the banking infrastructure, they don't have a bank on every corner like we do here, at least in Texas. But here in the States, a bank on every corner, they don't have that. So the telecom industry created a way to bring that financial empowerment to the masses. Pretty cool.
Really cool.
You know, I noticed too on your site, 1Route's goal is to bring trust back to voice. I found that really a very moving sentence, and hearing you talk about honesty, core values that are so important, really driving hopefully good business today, good business decisions. So, can you explain what that means to you? Bring trust back to voice.
Oh, I'm glad you like that, and that's exactly what our whole goal is. And you both hit the nail on the head earlier as you're talking about not wanting to answer the calls. Can you even trust who's calling you anymore? And you start thinking about, and maybe this is, the three of us, we remember a time where you answered the phone
Oh
where there
yeah.
was no caller ID. It's like, well, I don't know who's calling me. I better figure this out. And I think there's that point in time that we need to be able to trust that if it is my doctor or my bank or my kid's school, I need to know that it's my kid's school calling me and it's not just some spoof number. And on the flip side, obviously with 1Route, looking at it from more of an international perspective, we like to look at it from, well, there's good folks all over the world that are just wanting to talk to family. And if their calls are not being graded right or attested correctly, it might show up as spam or it might not get answered. And it might be an emergency. So, Evan, I mean, you said it earlier. It's like, what if it's like a seriously important call? So that's the idea. And I realize we're in a day and time where texting and OTT apps and all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, bringing that back a little bit to just a regular old phone call and being able to trust that, hey, Jamie's actually Jamie and she's calling me, I'll answer it.
Well said. Yeah, I basically trust no one now on the phone, whether it's between deep fakes and spoofing. My
Hey,
bank
that's the truth.
sent me an email saying, if you see someone's calling from Citizens, it's not us. It's like, what does that mean? It's like you can't trust anyone. But yes, I think we get the message. So in addition to being COO of 1Route, you're also host of a popular telecom podcast called 1Route Roundup. First question, where's my invitation? Did it get lost in the mail or did you try to call me and
Tried to
it went
call.
to voicemail?
I'm gonna hold you to it, Evan, though.
So I'm looking forward to that. But what are some of the interesting takeaways you've had with guests over the last couple of seasons?
It's been fun. The 1Route Roundup. I guess we needed a Texas twist with the name. We'll do a roundup. Quick story. This all came about based on trying to learn perspectives from people from around the world. And we had a friend that was coming through Texas, a friend in the industry that came through Texas, had him over to the house. And he's from over in the European area. And this was around Halloween time. And we had a little fire in the fire pit out back. We were cooking s'mores. And I mean, y'all know what s'mores are, right?
Sure.
I love me
roasted marshmallows.
Of course.
S'mores. Well, he had never seen a s'more before. He'd never had a s'more. It's like, what in the world? So we cooked some s'mores and we just have this conversation about the industry and work, eating some sticky marshmallows, and gaining perspective of where he comes from and not knowing what he called a sugar bomb was. And so I thought, that'd be really cool to do, like this idea of having s'mores on a podcast. And then the reality trying to get s'mores to people all over the world I was like, that's not going to work. So, so it came up with the 1Route Roundup. Evan, that didn't answer your question at all. But the most interesting thing I would say is industry-wide over the last 2 coming on, we're starting the 3rd season, is compatibility. Excuse me.
Mm.
Compatible technology. That just seems to be the most thing that echoes through every single episode is the need for more risk officers or revenue assurance, fraud management, business assurance. There's all kinds of different names throughout there, but compatibility seems to be the underlining tone every season of why we can put a man on the moon. We can collaborate different countries and put somebody on the moon, but we still get this crazy spam call for warranty. So yeah, collaboration and compatibility. That's the big one.
Fabulous.
Well said. Well said. Well, that brings us to one of my favorite sections here, our rapid fire.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So first thing that pops into your mind, we'll do this super quick, but it's fun. It gets a little more there. All right. So what has been the most interesting international trip you've ever been on and why?
Good or bad?
No, just kidding. Good.
Good trip. So international, Ethiopia. Ethiopia was a fascinating trip. And I can tell you right now, 1, you gain a lot of perspective, and 2, you drink some of the best coffee you've ever had. It is amazing. Birthplace of coffee, Ethiopia.
It's fantastic.
I don't know.
I'll have to get over there and get some coffee. So we're all techies here. What's some of the most interesting futuristic tech, emerging tech that you're excited about personally, professionally?
Well, if you ask my kids, they would tell you I'm not excited about technology. You know, they feel that way. It's like they don't have phones, they don't have laptops.
Like my dad keeps throwing me off of screens. What are you talking about?
I know, it's like no screen time. You're walking to school.
Backwards.
Exactly. No, I'd say some of the stuff that's coming out revolving around education, I find that fascinating. More so, I know that's not necessarily for the telecom industry, but technology-wise in general, the education stuff, Vodafone Foundation, they are doing virtual classrooms now for rural areas and countries across the globe. And stuff like that, when you're able to use we'll tie it into telecom, use your network, create a virtual classroom and be able to educate young girls and young boys in rural areas across the globe, that's got my vote. That's cool stuff.
Probably the best answer I've ever heard to that question. All right. One more stumper for you. What is the last book you've read and would you recommend it?
Oh, yes. Storyteller by Dave Grohl.
I'm writing that down.
Dave Grohl was the lead singer, frontman for the Foo Fighters, former drummer for Nirvana. His book, Storyteller, it's a fascinating read, and it's so open and honest about how, a lot of his life has just been dumb luck, or it's been right place, right time. But then how he's transitioned through dealing with and overcoming losses, with Kurt Cobain, and then most recently with Taylor Hawkins. Obviously, I love music, but all in all, even if you don't like music, it's a great read, and just going through life and being open to opportunities. Really cool.
Wow, I'm going to read that one. If I read books anymore, which I don't.
You can listen to it.
I do audiobooks now, so that's a much more easy format for some reason these days. I guess one last thing, advice to up-and-comers in the telecom industry, maybe, veterans like yourself who are getting out of service and maybe are confused, a little disorientated, where to go, what to do. What's one piece of advice you'd give them?
Sure. Take a deep breath. It's okay. No, in all seriousness, the transition from military life to commercial life, it's harder than you realize. And it took me a long time to figure out that it was a struggle for myself. It took a lot of years to do that. So definitely take a deep breath. It's okay to talk to people. But to up and coming young people that maybe not from the military background, I would tell them learn another language. It's never too late. They have all this, like I said, education, technology. They have all those cool apps out there. Learn another language, and that alone breaks down barriers and really kind of good icebreakers if you go to another country and just say, hi, how are you doing in their language? And you'd be amazed from a business standpoint globally how much you connect more with people when you're just putting forth that effort to speak in someone else's language.
Yeah, I gotta say, I feel like I've been talking with Matthew McConaughey because
All right.
beautiful accent, so Texan, but so
Thank
global
you.
and
I'll say
so
thank you, ma'am.
absolutely. You're welcome. But truly, it's been so fascinating.
It's Matthew McConaughey with less hair, but otherwise, yes.
Man,
so.
that's the truth.
This is going to go sideways so fast. So maybe we should stop now before we get ourselves in trouble. But thank you for joining us, Jeffrey. Really a great mission. Can't wait for you to fix globally this scourge of fake and phony and fraud calls out there globally, and onwards and upwards.
Well, Jamie and Evan, I really appreciate y'all. Appreciate your time, and thank you. And Evan, I'm going to hold you to it, boss.
Yeah.
You're coming on the show.
I'll wear my best cowboy hat, and we'll get on with it.
I like it.
It's good to know we have good people solving for some serious issues we've got going on in telecom. So thank you.
Thank you, man.
And guys, if you enjoyed today's Data Movers podcast, as we did, please be sure to check us out at jsa.net/podcast for upcoming Data Movers episodes released around every other week. And of course, other episodes of our JSA podcast series. Ed?
Yeah, be sure to follow us on Twitter, X at jscotto, Evan Kirstel. Jamie, you got to start posting more. This whole motherhood thing, like looking after a child, is really taking away from your Twitter X time. So it's time to get your priorities right. But
I love Twitter X. Like that just flows up, like I think it should be the new brand,
All right, let's do it.
I drive a Tesla X, so I kind of feel like it would still be in brand for Elon. Anyway, oh my gosh, guys, always a pleasure. Thank you for tuning in, and happy networking.